And what I really needed was to recreate myself, which means to bring something new into the world that has never existed before.
Everyone, I'm Scott Gamm, Strategy Voice Associates, going to talk to us about publicity and public relations. Welcome, Scott.
Terrance, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great having you too. I'm very excited about this. This is a topic that a lot of people, it's like a black box. People don't understand what it is a lot of times. Like, how do you get noticed? How do you get your ideas out to the mainstream media? One big break could make you in this, and just interested to understand a little bit where you came from. I know you spent a lot of time on the other side as a journalist yourself. Now you're representing talent in the marketplace. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you got started.
Yeah, well, I've actually been on a lot of different sides of this industry, and I actually started out doing my own PR, booking myself on shows. I started a financial blog back in 2009 after the Great Recession, and I booked myself literally hundreds of times on television, on the Today Show with Kathy Lee, other hours of the Today Show with Ann Curry, Fox News Channel, CNBC, some of the local stations in New York. I mean, I was a regular commentator on financial issues affecting young people. And from there, I went into financial journalism and spent 4 years as a reporter at TheStreet.com, where I was writing articles about the markets, but also interviewing market experts and participating in the Street's video content. And so in that role, I was actually booking market strategists on the Street's air. So now I was on the other side, receiving pitches from PR folks and deciding who should go on air. And I was really involved in that process. And then I went over to Yahoo Finance, and I was a reporter for them covering the markets based on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And so whether it was, doing my own PR and booking myself on shows to being the journalist and interviewing folks and putting them on the air. And now on the other side, I guess back on the other side, helping other folks get noticed in the media, spread their message. And I specialize in helping folks in financial services. So whether you're a financial advisor, a market strategist, a money manager, if you have a point of view on the stock market and you're looking to communicate it in traditional media outlets, on social media platforms, my agency will help you do it.
Wow, that's a great, we always tell people to know exactly who you work for and exactly what the outcome is. That was completely clear. Just real quick, before we get on with some questions, you booked yourself on these shows, the Today Show, and how do you book yourself on a show? You become your own best client.
Yeah, well, it's not easy. And I mean, look, I was, you have to know your story. You have to really put in the time. You have to know who to contact, when to contact them. And most importantly, I mean, and when I say when to contact them, not just the time of the day and the day of the week, but you have to know when in the news cycle to contact them. And I got to say, when I did this 10 years ago, I mean, I really didn't have the perspective or the experience to know when to contact folks. So I kind of just, by trial and error learned how to do it. And then when I worked in journalism, it all became clear, it was like, okay, this is how you do it, right? And so I have that perspective now when I'm helping clients. I have the, years of me kind of just winging it on my own, trying to book myself on air. And then I have the more professional experience where I was a part of a real newsroom and I know, what stories will resonate with journalists, and most importantly, when to contact the right people and how a newsroom works and how stories are put on the air or published online or, put in the newspaper. I mean, this is all experience that took, years to sort of develop and hone, and intelligence that took years to learn, and a lot of trial and error. And, I think that's where the value of an agency comes into play, especially an agency like mine, where you're going to be working with someone who has, lived this business for many years.
What's number one challenge people have right now, getting noticed?
Well, I think, right now, people need to really understand what their area of expertise is, what topics are they passionate about, because when you're passionate about a topic, the audience notices that, and then the media outlet that you're speaking on notices that as well, and that'll score points for you over the long term. So that's one. And then I think two is know where your place is in the media landscape, right? If you're new to media and you haven't been doing this for years, you need to be cognizant of that your sort of market share of the media oxygen may be less than someone who has been doing this for decades. And so that doesn't mean that you shouldn't start somewhere, but it's just, I think it's just important to set expectations. And then the other thing that I really try to help clients do is to frame their point of view in a way that is digestible for journalists, right? So what does that mean? Well, a lot of my clients are financial advisors, right? They're experts on the stock market, on financial planning, and they have a lot to say on those topics. I think where I come in is I'm trying to help them nail that very narrow intersection between market commentary and media commentary, and it's a very narrow corner. And I've noticed that just because you know a lot about the stock market or financial planning doesn't mean you know how to communicate that in a way that's digestible for a journalist or in the media. And so that's, I think, the real value of a PR agency, among other benefits. But I think for my agency specifically, my background as a financial journalist, I not only have an understanding of the markets just like my clients do, but I have that media background that I can apply to this process as well.
So they want information that their audience can digest. And
So,
I think I heard you say that a lot of times, the expert may be coming in way over their head, or, with language they may not get or understand. Is that what I'm hearing?
that's part of it. And
Interesting point.
I think when you're talking to the media, and it's not necessarily just about whether you're speaking too technical or too in the weeds, because journalists, they're smart people. They'll understand what you're saying. I mean, obviously you want to explain it in a concise way. But I think when you're speaking, you want to have two audiences in mind. One, the journalist, right? Is the journalist understanding what I'm saying? And two, like, okay, I know the journalist cares about their audience, so I also want to make sure I'm communicating in a way that an audience might understand. So there's really, as the expert, you have two audiences, right? The journalist, because they're the gatekeeper of the information. In other words, the information that gets passed to the audience first has to go through the journalist. But then you also want to okay, I'm talking to the journalist, but I also want to make sure I'm providing value for their audience, right? It's a transaction. You're providing value to the journalist and they're providing value to you because you're getting your name mentioned in a prestigious media outlet that will give you that third-party validation that you need to build your credibility, improve the results in Google search terms when somebody searches your name or your firm. All that stuff is important.
Speaking about that, that's a big question. How does someone know what's important versus what's important to them? What's important to the audience and the journalist versus what's important to them?
Well, I think the way to think about that is when you're communicating to a journalist on a topic, and you could really argue that when you're communicating to anybody, in sort of a short period of time, you want to give them a snapshot of your thinking, right? And if the journalist wants more, they'll ask you. But don't feel the need to communicate everything you know about a topic. Give us the snapshot, give us those sound bites. And that's really important, because what I like to tell people is when you read an article, let's just say you read an article about the markets. I mean, maybe you haven't thought about this a lot, but it's pretty obvious, right? You have, the headline, you have the text, and then you have various expert quotes in the article. When you look at a lot of news articles, you'll notice that the expert quotes have a certain tone and rhythm that is pretty standard. And I can speak to the stock market specifically. I think what journalists are looking for are experts to humanize the stock market. Don't tell me what, the numbers are necessarily. Don't tell me what the stock market did yesterday, or that the Dow was up 400 points yesterday. Put it into perspective for me. Humanize it. What is the market communicating? Right? Journalism was all about telling stories. So if you can tell the story behind the market, I think that's going to score a lot of points with journalists and with their audience.
That's interesting. You talk about stories like human interest stories, or different stories about success and failure in the market, or in their world. It doesn't have to be the market. You're talking about publicity, so you're talking about getting your message out there.
Well, that's part of it. I think what I meant by humanizing the market is, what is the story? In other words, how can you use storytelling to explain the rationale of a market or the market action on any given day? Right. The market had a correction because, investors feared XYZ factors. Fear, right? That's humanizing the market. So there's
got
subtle
a cold,
ways.
right? It had the sniffles.
Right. Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Now, again, I'm talking about the areas I specialize in PR, of course, the markets. But yes, to your point, there's a million other different examples of PR and types of stories that you may want to tell personal stories as well. I think that's less relevant in the market space, unless it's about, as a money manager, what you're buying and selling, things like that. But I think journalists are looking for, digestible ways to explain the market action to their audience. And they're looking
you have what outlets you have? You have TV, like the mainstream media, the networks, and then you have the non-mainstream, the internet network is this giant network. Now then you still have some print, right? What else is there, or what's the good strategy for each? That might be good to talk about.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, especially in the finance space, there's a lot to choose from. Like you mentioned, the major cable business outlets. Then you have print outlets that have been around for 100, 150 years, that everyone knows what those are. And those outlets have very, very robust digital platforms. And then you have the digital only text publications, right? So just websites covering the markets. They don't have a print publication. They don't have a TV network. There's just a standalone online website covering the markets. Those are very valuable, because remember, how do people check the market action? How do they check what the Dow's doing, what the NASDAQ is doing? Online, right?
Yeah, right.
Maybe they have a, Bloomberg terminal, but, consumers usually go online and just kind of see what's going on. And then you have some standalone online only video channels that are broadcasting content about the markets.
Right.
So yeah,
things have changed, right? It's changed so fast in our short last few years. Like the podcasts I'm sure are coming up for a way to learn about that. It's interesting.
Podcasts are becoming, well, maybe not even becoming. I think that they're here, right? I mean, the value of being on a podcast can be incredibly important for a financial planner or a money manager, right? I mean, I think, podcasts may have, in some cases, smaller audiences than a traditional media outlet, but that audience may be very loyal, and so, or at least more loyal than, a traditional outlet. So you might get more follow through after your appearance.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, that's the game is changing. How does someone get started that was brand new, and maybe they don't have the resources or the credibility to enroll a PR firm? Like, how would someone get started trying to get their message into the hands of some of these journalists?
Well, I think, you want to be out there. And I mean, I think the best way to start is through social media, right? So what points of view are you communicating on the platforms that you control? So whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn, start to, put your thoughts on your subject out there,
Mhm.
and you can follow different journalists and kind of organically make connections and get attention. And I think that's something you're always going to want to do, even if you do hire a PR agency. That's you kind of in this cycle, right? I mean, I don't, when people say everything is 24 hours, I mean, it's call it 18 hours, right? I mean, there's a, whether it's 10 o'clock at night, there's a hunger for what your subject is, or whether it's during market hours, right? So social media has allowed people to communicate whenever they want. And so I think if you're not going to, put the resources into getting in front of these journalists, you can kind of start somewhere by tweeting, posting on LinkedIn, letting people know that you have a point of view.
Now, if you're taking that to another level and you're starting to gain some followers and you have an audience, at what point and how would they enroll someone like you? And what would that relationship look like? That's very curious to a lot of people.
I mean, look, I don't want people to think that you can hire, I mean, a lot of people hire a PR firm because they don't have the time to take the baby steps on social media, and or they don't have the wherewithal, or they just want, just like, you may not want to do your own taxes, or you may not want to wash your own car, right? I mean,
right.
People outsource things, right? I mean, so the PR is no different. I mean, sure, could you handle your own PR? Yeah. I mean, but you could also clean your own house and wash your own car, all that, and do your own taxes. It's really hard to answer that. I mean, I would almost really want to know what someone's goals are, what they're looking to do in PR. Are they looking to be the next, big media star, or are they just trying to, slowly get their message out there and show some clips to their clients and to prospective clients? Hey, I was quoted in this outlet, or I appeared on this show talking about the markets.
Can you give me a couple examples of people you work for? You don't have to name names, but places that you've helped them get noticed on, and what the outcome might have been with that?
Yeah, well, it's Strategy Voice Associates. We're working with a number of pretty well-known financial advisors, market strategists, and a few folks that are newer to the game, but with the right framing and, helping them really hone their message and point of view on the markets. We've been getting them placed in articles and on shows, and they've been sharing the spotlight with some pretty well-known strategists. So I think, that's to show you that there is room for, I don't want to say there's room for everyone, but there's enough out there that, a lot of folks can participate in this. You don't have to be doing this for 20 years to be in the media. So, I've been helping actually folks that have a long history of doing media take their media, footprint to the next level using some really unique methodologies that I've kind of reverse engineered from my time in journalism. Because remember, when I was a journalist, I got to see the work of almost every PR agency. And I got to see not just what I thought as a journalist, like how I would want to be pitched as a journalist is how I'm pitching other journalists, right? It's just like kind of common sense. But, as a journalist, you do get to see some incredibly bad pitches. And so that's been eye-opening to kind of see what works and what doesn't work, or at least to just see what out there, like, wow, someone is really going about it this way. So, but anyway, I try to use that intelligence to my client's advantage.
Right. You reverse engineer everything. I mean, if I had a tax problem, I'd want a former IRS agent representing me, and a lot of people do and do it successfully. So it's kind of what you're doing in PR. Is you're a former journalist representing and curating journalists now, and helping and helping get those the media plays. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to continue to apply my interest in the markets to my work with clients, right? Like when I was a journalist, I found that, a number of PR folks, like it would be clear that they really didn't either understand or they weren't passionate about the topics that their clients specialized in.
Mhm.
And it may not seem like that's such an important part of this, but I think it is. And
Right.
certainly as a journalist, when I did see PR folks that you could tell, okay, that this person really understands the financial market news cycle and the financial topics that journalists care about, like it made all the more difference because it's kind of like night and day. So the journalist is aware of that. And so that is something that I think I'm excited to apply to my clients that I don't think many agencies can say that they have a, former journalist, servicing their clients. Some do. There is out there,
A very, very unique offering. So I've Scott Gamm. How do people get a hold of you, Scott?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and you can go to strategyvoiceassociates.com to learn more. My email is scott@strategyvoiceassociates.com. I'm on Twitter, and I would love to hear from you.
Sweet. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.